It's time to get real and raw, and it's time to talk about the thing that I was always nervous to share with anyone in my life, anyone who knew me. They did not know this about me. Guess what it was? It's called binge eating disorder. And I kind of self-diagnosed myself when I was around 2021. But let's back up a little bit. So in the last video where we left off was talking about my first fast and how that led to basically this cycle, which is a clinical term called binge eating disorder. And all that it is, not negating how serious it is, but in layman's terms, it's a cycle where it starts with a form of restriction. And in my case, it was a 21-day fast when I was 16 years old on water and juice alone. And then it moved to a binge, which is just my body reacting naturally to not being nourished properly, needing a large amount of calories to sustain myself. And so my body went into overdrive and I began to binge on tons of food. And a binge is basically eating a large amount of calories in a short period of time. And there's gray areas in there too, because there's been times where I would graze all throughout the day and that turned into also thousands of calories as well. And so a binge does not look like any one way, but the end result is, for me personally, was guilt, shame. I did not feel well. My body felt so abused by all the things I was stuffing myself with. And I would do it usually in secrecy, so no one ever really knew. That's why this is something very vulnerable for me to share. And that's why in my last video I said, please be patient with me and also please be gentle with me, because this is something that I'm coming out to the world with that no one really knew about me. Maybe a few people I can count on one hand that actually knew this about me. So anyways, in the most simplest form of definition, that's what binge eating disorder is. And so from high school, now we're gonna go to college. My first years in college, I went to Armstrong Atlantic State University in Savannah. And I began to get very active. I was planning to go to the Army at one point. I know, random, that's another video for another day. I've tried to do a lot of things in my life. I mean, I thought it would have been dope. So anyway, but I bring that up because in ROTC, we had to start training for our PT test so that we could pass our physical exam essentially. And I began to run a lot, like 2 miles at a time. And I was trying to meet this number. And so in some days we would run 3 or 4 miles. So I began to get in better shape. I was also very busy on campus. I was a part of so many different organizations, and I was also waitressing on the weekends and at nights. So I was and oh yeah, you're there for class, right? Probably should have focused more on that in the beginning now that I think about it. But anyways, so in college, I started to notice that vicious habit that was prominent in my life as a senior in high school, a junior even in high school, where I would just binge like crazy on straight up junk food and then try to restrict in some way to keep my weight at a certain number. That was less prominent when I got to college. And I look back at it now and I think it's because one, I had a couple of roommates. So it's not really an environment that's, sounds bad. It's not really an environment that's conducive to binging. So I didn't want my roommates to see me doing that. I didn't want the, guy I was dating at the time to see me doing that. And you're in this bubble of a campus and you're so busy. There's not a lot of idle time for me to sit around and wallow in self-pity with tons and tons of food. But also, here's the thing. There was a form of allowance there that I gave myself. I allowed myself to eat basically whatever I wanted. Even though I was vegetarian, I was like, whatever I wanted within that realm of being a vegetarian. almost guilt-free because I was so active. I felt like, if I want this pizza, I can have it. But I was also like eating salad. I was also eating, you know, you had the dining package or whatever they call it at school. So I would go and I would get, you know, you have meals that are available to you X amount of times a day. There's a little convenience store if you want a little snack, but I allowed myself to basically eat whatever I want. That things didn't seem off limits. Things didn't seem like, you know, it was so bad, but more tempting, that I ended up, after I'm off this diet, I'm gonna eat everything inside that I was actually wanting. Does that sound familiar? And so I wanna stop right here. I wanna stop right here because this is getting good, but I wanna keep your attention and I don't want these videos to be too long, okay? So come back next week. Let's finish talking about when I was in college and I realized that this habit of restrict, binge was starting to dissipate. All because I started to have a form of allowance around food that was not restriction, and I was very, very active. And running, cardio, what? You gotta eat. And that I was. So I'll see you next week. Let's continue talking about this.